A few years ago, my friend and my coworker, she gave me this gift for Christmas. It is a journal that says this on the cover: useless stuff to overthink. It even says it on the spine in case I forget. And I just truly laughed when I opened this gift because I realized that this is a friend who truly knows me. Honestly, if there is one thing I am an expert at, it is getting stuck in my thoughts. This Daily Dose is kickstarted by a devotional I read by Lisa TerKeurst called Unglued. And her words and her stories and her references to the Bible were, for me, held alongside something else that I've been thinking about lately, and it's this: how can we both honor and love and be confident with what's in our minds and get unstuck from the ways our thoughts sometimes consume us? From the ways they write messages about who we should or shouldn't be, or about who other people in our lives should or shouldn't be. Do you ever feel that way? And if you're just living inside your brain overthinking every choice you make or conversation you have, how does that make you feel? There's a podcast that I've listened to a couple of times called Brains On, and their mission is to encourage kids' natural curiosity and wonder by using science and history. So they interview kids who ask their real and honest questions about the world, and then they take each episode to explore it. And I love that concept because we all know that kids ask the best questions. They're more likely to allow themselves to be uninhibited by asking why over and over again. They don't feel the need to calculate their questions before they say them out loud. They just ask them. And sure, as kids get older, they learn from the way people respond to those questions, or they react based on other questions that they've asked in the past. But I want us to hold on for a minute to the idea of getting unstuck in the ways that kids get unstuck through their curiosity and their wonder. I think sometimes we don't just get stuck overthinking things. We actually get stuck in patterns of how we think. We fall into a thinking rut, you might say. Here's how it works for me sometimes. And this might sound a little trivial, but stick with me. I was told at some point in middle school that I was not athletic, that I was uncoordinated, and that I would always be picked last for teams on kickball in our little playground. So I eventually quit trying new things. I went to a middle school that still had recess, and when other kids would rush to line up for Foursquare or a pickup game of basketball, I never even tried to join in. And this funny little thing has been carrying with me into adulthood. I can name a few friends who recently asked if I wanted to play pickleball with them, and I just changed the subject and managed to avoid reminding about this altogether, rather than defaulting to, hey, would you teach me and have patience with me as I learn something new? I get stuck in the rut about being uncoordinated and terrible at anything athletic. In the Bible, the book of Romans is written by the Apostle Paul to the Roman people, helping them to understand what Jesus' life was all about, and also helping them to realize how a community of faith that's bound together by a common belief in Jesus could really do some amazing things together. Paul lays out a roadmap for a Christian community. And he doesn't paint it out to be something that's full of nonstop joy and happiness. He acknowledges that just because you're a follower of Jesus, it doesn't mean that you're immune from pain. It doesn't mean that you'll never doubt yourself. It doesn't mean that things will somehow be easier. But he keeps pointing us to Jesus over and over to remind us that we have an anchor. We have the promise of hope in God's only Son. And Romans 12 is like the ultimate guide to getting out of our heads, to getting unstuck from our own thoughts that have a sneaky way of isolating us. Paul writes in verse 2, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what is God's will, his good, pleasing, and perfect will." So, what if we use that as our starting place, even if we're far from the age of a curious child? What if renewal of our minds means looking around us and first noticing the ruts that we're in? For me, the word rut makes me think immediately of mud. And if you can think about times when you've driven down a dirt road after a rainstorm, you have to intentionally avoid the deep, muddy ruts in the road so your car doesn't get stuck, don't you? You avoid those ruts so your wheels don't keep spinning, making the ruts even deeper. I do believe that God created humans with the beautiful ability to think, to use our minds to ask questions. But I also believe that God doesn't desire for us just to be stuck in our heads. So today I encourage you to ask along with me, what patterns are there in your life that need to be unstuck? Remember that we have a faith community and a God who desperately wants that renewal and that unstuckness for you and for me.